Good evening, everybody. I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Holcomb from the 11 Alive Weather Impact Team, and we are watching Milton very closely here. This is a monster storm in the southern parts of the Gulf of Mexico, just skirting the northern part of the Yucatan Peninsula that you can see right down here. This is the Yucatan Peninsula. Here is Milton, and it has been moving just to the north of that, having some impacts on the northern part of the Yucatan Peninsula, but it is a Category 5 hurricane right now. We have seen some fluctuations in strength. It is really hard for a hurricane to hold Category 5 strength for a long time because it usually encounters what we call eye wall replacement cycles, where the eye wall just kind of replaces itself, and when it does that, we have those fluctuations in the strength and intensity of it. It was a Category 4 for much of the early morning hours today, and then it did come back to a Category 5. I want to zoom in a little closer and show you here what we're watching with this. And notice that when we had it weaker as a Category 4, the eye was a little more ragged, but then we started seeing this eye becoming a little better organized, and that is the intensity of that storm right there. We might see a little bit of a change there within the eye of that, and we might even see a little bit of weakening again. So that is just the process of, or the evolution of these hurricanes, especially very strong hurricanes, because it's really tough for them to hold on to that Category 5 status for a long time. But it is now, with those winds at 165 miles an hour, moving to the east-northeast at about 10 miles an hour. And it's going to still take a little while before this moves inland in Florida, but it looks like that landfall is going to be on Wednesday night late or overnight into the early morning hours here on your Thursday. So here's a look at the track we're watching right now. Again, this is based on the 8 o'clock advisory that we got. The track didn't really change anything from the 5 to the 8 o'clock. This intermediate advisory really just updates the wind speeds, also the pressure with that and the direction. So we've got the Cat 5. It'll be moving in along the west coast of Florida. We're thinking, again, late Wednesday night into early on Thursday, maybe around 2 o'clock in the morning. And what we're watching with this, notice it goes from a 5 to a 4 to a 3 at landfall. That's the Category 3. So from 165 mile an hour winds to 125 mile an hour winds. Yes, that is lower, but it is still classified as a major hurricane pushing into Florida there late Wednesday night and into Thursday. The reason we think that that wind speed may come down a little bit is it is most likely going to encounter a little bit of shear there before it makes landfall. We have also been noticing that the track is trying to push to the south just a little bit. And many of our computer models and the spaghetti model plots have been indicating that it might shift to the south. Earlier, it was showing it moving right over Tampa Bay, or maybe a little bit to the north of that. Now it's just at Tampa Bay and a little bit to the south. You know, again, we don't always want to focus just on the center point there of where the eye could move in, because this is going to be a system that really impacts a big part of the Florida Peninsula. Once it does make landfall, it is going to cross over land, becoming a Category 1 on the east side of Florida, move out into the Atlantic, and most likely it will fall apart as it goes out into the Atlantic. Now, I want to show you these warnings and advisory. First, let's take a look at the wind history with this, because as you know, as we were tracking this system, starting off as a tropical depression last Thursday, then a tropical storm Friday, then Sunday it became a hurricane, and then on Monday, that's the day we had this rapid intensification going from a Category 1 to a Category 5. And at one point, those winds were at 180 miles an hour. Then with that eye wall replacement cycle, the wind speeds came down a little bit to a Cat 4, but that was only briefly. Now it is back up to that Cat 5, and we'll see with the 11 o'clock advisory tonight if that wind speed increases any more or if it starts to settle back down a little bit. So that's what we're going to be watching over the next 24 hours. By this time tomorrow night, we're going to be seeing this system getting closer and closer to the Florida coastline there on the west coast. Here is another look at the advisories and the hurricane warnings that are in effect. So, of course, you would think that the western coast of Florida is in that hurricane warning because it's going to be moving in there. But it also goes inland, and on the east coast of Florida, we have a hurricane warning in effect. This storm isn't going to make a direct landfall on the East Coast, but what's happening is it is going to maintain that hurricane strength traveling all across the Florida Peninsula. And so even on the east side, as it goes back out over water, it is still going to be giving them hurricane force winds. So that's why we have that hurricane warning in effect there for really all of Central Florida. So it's going to be impacting a lot of people, not just where the eye goes in, with heavy rain, a lot of wind, and then the storm surge there along the coastal region too. The other thing we are watching is along the Georgia coast. Again, we're not going to have a direct landfall from a tropical system there from Milton, because Milton is going to stay down to the south and move out into the Atlantic. But it's on the northern fringes of that circulation where we're going to see the wind and we're going to see rain and storm surge coming in to the Georgia coast. So I want you to notice this right here. Yesterday, we told you about the tropical storm watch that was in effect for the Georgia coast. Now, we still have that in effect inland to close to Waycross, over toward Jessup, and up toward Savannah. But now inland here from the Georgia-Florida line up to the Altamaha Sound, including Brunswick, including St. Simons there, we do have a tropical storm warning in effect. Then, notice the blue out here on the offshore. Over the waters here, there's a tropical storm warning in effect that goes up to the Georgia and also the South Carolina line. So we do expect the potential there for some tropical storm force winds that will be along the coastline. So we're not only watching the wind, but we're watching the storm surge. Now, you would expect storm surge to happen as this system is making landfall later tomorrow night, and that's exactly what's going to happen. As it makes landfall, the greatest surge is going to be just south of that area where the center of circulation moves through, because with this flow, it's just building up all that water and it's bringing it in over land. So really from Tampa down to south of Fort Myers, that's where we're going to have some of those highest storm surges. And I'm going to break those down for you coming up in just a little bit. But this is why we have to watch for some of that storm surge up on the Georgia coast, because as it moves up toward the north and crosses the peninsula, this is what I'm talking about. Not a direct landfall on the Georgia coast because it's going to move away, but it's the northern part of this and that flow. Look what it's doing. It's directing the wind and all of that water and the rain coming in along the Georgia coast. So there will be some storm surge there, at least in the southern parts of the Georgia coast, and rough surf over the entire Georgia coast due to those winds around it, even though the Georgia coast is far from the center. So here's a look at what we're watching with some of those potential storm surges and the peak storm surges that we're expecting. You'll see here the purple color from Tampa and north of Tampa, down south of Sarasota, close to Port Charlotte. That purple color indicates storm surges of over a foot, and maybe even 12 to 15 feet in some spots, as all of that water is going to be rushing in around that center of the circulation there. And that is going to be major for a lot of people. There have been some spots where Helene, that had about a 6-foot storm surge, made water rise to some people's front doors. Well, this is going to be over that. We're going to see a lot of areas that will be flooded there due to that. Now, compare that over to the eastern side of Florida, where even though the system is moving out there can still be some storm surge up to 6 feet. Now, for the Georgia coast, I'm thinking it's going to be more of a 2 to 4 foot storm surge. And in fact, we'll take a closer look at that in just a minute as well. But let me show you the wind field. Right now, the wind field is really pretty tight around this, with the hurricane force winds extending not too far out from the center, maybe about 30 miles out from the center. Once it gets closer to land, notice that the yellows and oranges and red grows a little bit. We think that the wind field is going to expand a little bit, getting closer to land. And so the red color there indicates the hurricane force winds at 74 miles an hour or greater. The orange color shows the winds 57 to 73 miles an hour. The yellow is 39 to 56. Anything 39 and above is tropical storm force. So you see those tropical storm force winds covering the peninsula. Here come the hurricane force winds near Tampa, moving across. It starts to weaken a little bit, but still maintains that hurricane strength back out into the Atlantic. But here's what I want you to notice. Again, those tropical storm force winds coming up to around the southeastern coast of Georgia there. Again, St. Simons, Brunswick included in that area that could be seeing some of those winds. This is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday. Really, the brunt of the hurricane is actually going to be moving away from the coast. By late afternoon on Thursday, things are going to be getting better there, and we'll see these winds pulling away. This is at 11 o'clock on Thursday, so things will be really rough late Wednesday night, overnight into early on Thursday, then improving as the storm pulls away from Florida, as well as pulling away from the Georgia coastline as well. Here is a closer look at that storm surge here. This is some of the most likely scenarios, and it depends on where it's going to be coming in here. But a lot of this water could get piled up here into the bay as well. And then on down to the south, down toward Port Charlotte, Boca Grande. Look at all these reds here indicating greater than 9-foot storm surge. So it's worse with the way this system is moving to the south of that eye with all that water that's going to be piling up there over land when it moves in. And then here's another look at what we're watching. You see a lot of blue here along the Georgia coast. That's storm surge greater than a foot. There are some spots, though, where you see the yellow kind of filtered in there, especially right here, getting closer to the Brunswick area there north of Jacksonville. Some of the yellow indicating some storm surge that could be greater than 3 feet. So that's why we're kind of saying 1 to 4 feet, maybe some spots 2 to 4 foot storm surges there in the along the Georgia coast. And there's a closer look at that. Some of those yellows, especially down closer to St. Mary's and into Brunswick. So we, of course, are monitoring Milton very closely because it's going to have a major impact on Florida, some impacts on the Georgia coastline. But for us, those impacts are going to stay well down to the south. We're not really going to see any impacts here in our area. We're enjoying very nice weather here, thanks to a cold front that has already moved through. That is bringing in those cooler temperatures as well as the dry air, and we will get to enjoy some nice sunshine here for the rest of the week. So let's take a look at the forecast track. Now that we know that all the impacts are down to the south, I want you to focus on this system moving through the Gulf as it gets closer to Florida and just watch the structure with that. Now, this, of course, is future radar, our forecast track of what we think is going to be happening with the structure of the system. So this is at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. Here again is the western coast of the Florida Peninsula. There's Tampa right there. There's that center of circulation that's going to keep moving on in, and as it does, most likely near Tampa or a little bit to the south there, spreading in all this rain. And there you see the Georgia coast right there. Again, not a direct landfall, but some impacts on the north end of that system with the rain, and not only the rain, but also the wind whipping around up there and that storm surge along the Georgia coastline. And even though a lot of people are talking about that center of circulation, is it going to go to Tampa? Is it going to be south of Tampa? Excuse me, where exactly is it going to be? But really, the entire Florida Peninsula is getting at least some sort of impact here from this storm as it moves on through. Here we go into the Thursday morning time frame. This is at 6 o'clock in the morning. So the worst time for them really will be during those overnight hours on your Wednesday night and early on Thursday. Once we get to, this is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, a lot of the rain is already starting to pull out and pull away from not only the eastern side of the Florida Peninsula, but it's also pulling away from the Georgia coast too. So that all is going to keep moving on out and pushing out into the Atlantic. And later in the day, Thursday, things are going to be looking better as far as the weather is concerned. However, folks there are really going to be busy assessing the damage and the power outages and trying to get all of that restored, because we do think this is going to be very impactful there with those power outages that are going to be pushing on through. Now, for us, though, we don't have the impacts. We have the high pressure system that's over us now. The front that already moved through, we're on the good side of the front where we have the cooler air. Check out these morning temperatures. Friday and Saturday, we're talking about lows around 53 Friday, 51 on Saturday. Then the afternoon highs will be near average on Wednesday, a little below average Thursday and Friday, back to average on Saturday, and then into the 80s here on your Sunday afternoon. So here's how it all times out for us in the 7-day outlook as we're closely monitoring Milton. but it's not going to have any impact on us. We'll see that sunshine here, mostly sunny Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, plenty of sun. Look at those morning lows in the lower 50s Friday and Saturday. This can be a nice crisp morning to start the day. And then afternoon highs in the mid 70s Friday, upper 70s on Saturday. There you see the lower 80s coming back on Sunday. And then another front comes in Monday. I'm including just a 20% chance for an isolated shower Sunday with that front, very limited moisture with it. But then getting even cooler on Tuesday. Look at that. Highs near 71 for Tuesday afternoon.